Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with this week in cannabis news from August 14th to the 20th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of it as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, and take advantage whenever you feel ready, if you wish to do so, of course pending whatever incremental reform we're supposed to get from now until the end of the year, pending if Congress actually does anything. But the good news out of states, as we got this one from Ohio just in, thank you Daryl Rowland, Newspaper Geezer, for sharing this one timely on August 16th, as it is official. Recreational cannabis issue apparently gets enough valid signatures to make November ballot. So good job, Ohio. This is a document from Frank LaRose, Ohio Secretary of State. And we can see this document was initially filed on August 3rd, then only signed on August 11th, and then the news officially broke to us and everybody on August 16th. So just a reminder how things take time to develop and that there's always going to be people in the know before the actual story ends up breaking. But nonetheless, congrats, Ohio, and big ups to Franklin County for getting the required signatures. And another massive benefit of ending cannabis prohibition, Ohio could see $404 million in annual cannabis tax revenue if voters approve legalization this November, analysis finds. And that's essentially $404 million going back into the legal economy, because people can vote for legal cannabis with their tax dollars as opposed to only having the black market as an option. So steps in the right direction, of course, ending cannabis prohibition. Cannabis sales in Ohio could generate tax returns comparable to those now collected through the gross casino revenue tax, no doubt. And there was a recent story, I didn't add it in this video today, but I've covered it in the past, that Colorado, yet again, cannabis tax revenue has surpassed alcohol and tobacco. I don't know if it's combined, probably, but just goes to show there are definitely benefits to ending cannabis prohibition and having that legal market launched and regulated. So this story, link in the description if you want to go through it. But with that, from Greenway Magazine, an update out of Missouri, as Missouri cannabis sales surpassed $750 million for the year after a strong July. They are on fire, and so this one is as of August 15th, and so this is at least sales after launching for adult use. That big spike pops up, and we can see that there. July 2023 for Missouri, they brought in $123.2 million. So you can pause to read for more of the details, and then of course this chart differentiates recreational is green, medical sales is blue, since launching for adult use. We love to see Missouri still crushing it, as they focused on providing equal access to opportunity as opposed to social equity, which is equal outcomes, meaning nobody gets a chance like we see in New York and other states. And so more details down here if you wanted to pause to read. While Missouri sales have been projected to exceed $1.4 billion in 2023 alone. Apparently there was a product recall recently which could hamper those projections, but nonetheless goes to show that the legal market is working, at least better than having only a black market. And so with that, this one from Crane's Detroit Business. Now this is behind a paywall, I don't have access, but just figured I'd share it, as apparently Michigan's cannabis industry is now the top market in the nation. Here's why. So wish I could tell you more of the story, or at least share it with you, but it is outselling distilled booze in the state and is on track to easily top $3 billion in 2023 alone. And so massive numbers, of course. Another state that did not focus on equal outcomes and focused on equal access to opportunity, providing a lot of licenses to basically anyone that wanted to give it a shot. But yeah, so this link in the description, but that essentially covers everything that this could highlight. And with that, from Green Market Report, how Maryland's adult use roll stacks up. Another interesting one on a new hot market that has recently launched, this one as of July 1st, 2023. And so of course you can pause to read. The trajectory is generally positive. Stretching on the horizon down to were recreational sales. You can pause to read if you're interested in learning a bit more about Maryland and what their launch has seen so far, and then from meanwhile to settling in. Of course, full link in the description. But with that, on to Florida, looking at the Office of Medical Cannabis Use for this past week, August 14th to the 18th. We see one new dispensary opened, Green Dragon in Summerfield. Well, if we take a look at the qualified patient count for this past week, we can see it increased to 840,041 patients, which represents a week-over-week increase of 1,571 patients. So good to see more and more Floridians choosing to access a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative. And with that, the dispensations from August 11th to the 17th, we got all the MSOs in the state, the number of active dispensaries they have, and from this past week, the number of milligrams of THC sold, number of milligrams in CBD sold, and number of ounces of smokable flower sold. And unfortunately, it looks like Connoisseurs.io and Pierre Gilles are no longer updating their comp sheets, probably just enjoying their summer and living their lives. Fair enough. Whenever they do continue to do that, of course, I'll put those in the comments, but we do not have those as of now. So this is how we track Florida, though, checking the numbers week over week with this document. Well, we got this one randomly out of MSN.com, but figured I'd share it as a small market, but still chugging along. Vermont's cannabis industry looks ahead after a strong first year, as cannabis is budding in the Green Mountain State, bringing in just under $10 million in new revenue to the state so far. Nearly a year in, there are 59 dispensaries in the state and more than 500 other businesses ranging from cultivators, testing labs, manufacturers, and wholesalers. Again, the opportunity is very expansive once you end cannabis prohibition to provide jobs, not just in the cannabis industry, but other industries that are going to be affiliated with it. And so there's essentially more here if you wanted to pause to read about Vermont. Obviously, such a small market that it doesn't have a huge impact. Pause to read this part, and then I'll bring you down here if you wanted to pause to read the rest. But there is some details, and of course, always some interesting takeaways if you're interested or if you happen to be from Vermont. And so, with that, the big news that we got this week besides Ohio, of course, but thank you Deepak Anand for sharing his non-media clickbait headline. The German cabinet today has approved part 1 of a 2-part plan to legalize cannabis. And so while we didn't get what we wanted out of Germany, full-scale legalization and creating a commercial adult use market, this is the next best thing. And while this draft law will still need to be approved by Parliament, it's the first step, as the cabinet has at least approved what they have thus far. And so here's the new approved at the cabinet level draft law spanning 183 pages for a limited legalization initiative. Perhaps there should be a law prohibiting cannabis legalization bills exceeding 50 pages in length. I would agree with that. Alfredo Pascual, one of my favorite sources out of Europe. And so I'll put the link to that document in the description, but of course some other sources to just explain the details, or at least the juice out of it. So Boris Jordan, thank you for summarizing this. German government okays plan. So again, it's the cabinet first. Parliament still has to vote on it to legalize rec cannabis, but still big. This is simply the most important news for the legal cannabis industry this year, or at least for anyone with the footprint in Germany. And I'd say essentially that's really just Curaleaf and Tilray at the moment. January 1st, 2024, cannabis will be removed from the narcotics list in Germany. But keep in mind, it's not going to be a big or a fast growing market anytime soon. And so I don't know how much this will help Curaleaf or Tilray in the short term. But of course, they are the companies, at least in the cannabis industry, with the biggest exposure in Germany. And so with that, this is an article just from MorningStar on Curaleaf, for anyone that's interested in Curaleaf. Cutting valuation after weak results, but shares are still undervalued. And so just figured I would share this for anyone who's interested. This is essentially it. There's this one little bit at the bottom, but otherwise that way you don't have to grab the link in the description. Otherwise it is down there, of course. But main thing from that Barron's article that Boris shared, if the bill goes through, the government aims to review the societal impact of the new legislation after 4 years. I mean, we have enough data from Canada and legal states. Why wouldn't you just actively look at that while implementing this? That seems like a waste of time. The government has also said it plans to follow up with a second phase that would involve trailing the production and sale of cannabis in specialized stores under government licenses in selected regions. And so, of course, that's promising, but there's absolutely no timeline given. That's just what seems to be phase 2 out of what we've just seen as phase 1. And so with the planned legislation, Germany will be joining a string of countries that have relaxed rules around cannabis. Yes, and so while Germany could be doing more, at least they're taking the initial step that we needed them to based on all the promises they've made. And at least Bloomberg is also sharing the good news. German cannabis bill passes cabinet in legalization push, as draft law allowing adults to have 25 grams sent to Parliament. Adults can also grow as many as 3 plants, establish clubs. And so no commercial market, but as Boris did highlight, removing cannabis essentially from their narcotics list. But that'll be a massive precedent and a huge victory for the cannabis plant in Europe when that day comes. Now, unfortunately, this article is behind a paywall as well, so links in the description if you have Bloomberg. But these are the sort of headlines we love to see in mainstream outlets, highlighting Western countries and governments taking common sense approaches towards the cannabis plant. In fact, we need way more of this. But all this to remind you is that it is still a draft law that has to be approved by Parliament, and we assume that Parliament has to get that shit done and approve it before what Boris is saying, January 1st, 2024, descheduling from their narcotics list can actually come to fruition. And so we will be following this closely, but hopefully the German people will start paying attention as well and hold their government accountable if they don't keep their word, or if new obstacles come up and they kick the can down the road, much like we see in Congress, as Congress is clearly not working for Americans, or they haven't been for the last few years. But all that to say, good news out of business of cannabis, because if for some reason Germany doesn't want to look to Canada or all the data gathered in the U.S. from legal states to, craft their social review of legalization sooner than having to, do it after 4 years, which is, again, just a waste of time. At least they can look at Switzerland, whose apparently their pilot programs are finally launching, picking up steam, and it is gaining some curiosity from other players in Europe. And so that's notable, at least Switzerland, and its rapidly proliferating adult use cannabis pilot framework is fast becoming the center of attention for many European cannabis stakeholders and policymakers. Yes, well, I'd say that's good news. And so you can pause to read more. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but these are some of their trials and studies going on. While this one I would say is not a success at all. During the first 6 months of the study, only 180 of the total 374 participants have been able to access cannabis products. How is that the case? Anyways, so you can pause to read that bit and then pause to read the rest down here. While Zurican is at the end of this month, another much larger one set to be launched in Zurich, aiming to examine the effects of a commercial regulated distribution, a commercial market essentially, and then Script, another study set to be launched in 3 cities: Lucerne, BL, and the Swiss capital Bern. Of course, you can pause to read, otherwise full link in the description. While we love to see slowly but surely more and more countries stand for personal freedoms, as you'd think the US would be a beacon leading the way doing so, why does the DOJ shoot themselves in the foot again? You cannot make this shit up. I don't get why the DOJ hates Americans, and why in particularly they hate American cannabis consumers so much that they want to discriminate against them blatantly like this and keep the war on people going after we know it's been a failure for 50 years and all the data says to stop it. It makes no sense. So the DOJ says federal appeals court incorrectly decided that gun ban for cannabis consumers is unconstitutional. So the DOJ hates justice, and they decide what is just and unjust. And if you rule against what they believe to be unconstitutional or unconstitutional, they're going to say you incorrectly decided. So it's so sad to see what the DOJ has turned into, weaponized by the current administration. We have reviewed the decision and will be prepared to address it with a very biased oral argument that we're going to use and probably make us look more silly, and hopefully that's going to make more Americans wake up and rally this momentum to create some change, because that's the only way it's going to happen. But ironically, at the same time, from Marijuana Moment, we got this one as the Census Bureau begins collecting data about cannabis businesses and economic activity as the market enters the mainstream. And so who's doing the right thing? The DOJ by being so unjust, or the Census Bureau realizing, well, this industry is becoming mainstream. Ohio could be 24, Rhode Island could be 25. At that point, half the states have legal cannabis. How can the federal overhang still exist, right? So they're getting ready for it. Could this be foreshadowing? We'd love it to be the case, but again, I'm speculating. We don't know. But the feds want sales data on specific products, including cannabis-infused face creams, tinctures, shampoos, cakes, and pies. So I don't know about you, but it does look like the Census Bureau is preparing for some sort of a rescheduling review where cannabis is no longer going to be in the Schedule 1, and all these products, therefore, will not be illegal. Hence why they want to start collecting the data in and hopefully stop discriminating so blatantly against the cannabis industry. Wouldn't that be lovely? And so on top of that, if we didn't have enough data, got to bring you the studies from Marijuana Moment. Medical cannabis use linked to improved quality of life and better job performance for people with neurological disorders, new study finds. Who would have thought? And it is associated with improved quality of life, including better job performance, sleep, appetite, and energy, according to researchers at the University of West Attica in Greece, published a study in the journal Cannabis Neuroscientific Advances on Wednesday, following an analysis of survey data from medical cannabis patients with neurological disorders. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I invite you to pause to read it and weep. But among that group, 96% said that cannabis decreased their symptoms, 88% said it improved their ability to perform their professional duties, 79% said it enhanced their sleep, 71% said it improved their appetite, and 68% said it increased their energy and vitality. And this is more than the majority. 58% of the respondents said it was very effective. And so, again, data don't lie. You can pause to read more here. So pause to read this section, then I'll bring you down a little bit more. Pause to read. Otherwise, full link is in the description. We love to see more and more data to shut the prohibitionists up outright. And with that, from Marijuana Moment, just sharing what another GOP candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, and his views are on cannabis at the federal level. It seems he supports federal cannabis legalization and allowing veterans to use psychedelics. And I do appreciate this, quite a more nuanced view, and would probably require other substances be descheduled. And so if he were to get elected and take action, I don't think he's going to get elected. But if he were, we might, see him act quickly if he were to keep his word. But I also know that Vivek comes from the pharma industry. And for that reason, you could see the same sort of thing where he says this and then he gets in and does essentially what Biden did. Says all this, but then does nothing. Now, for some reason, I can respect him as an individual more and think that he might get some more done just because he seems like an action taker and he hasn't been in the public side forever. He's been in the private sector. But I still just know that he has a pharma background, so I'd be skeptical whether he would, outright deschedule. Probably wouldn't. Probably would be something similar to the review process we're seeing right now. We're not seeing much of anything at the moment, but all that to say, these are Vivek's views. Full link in the description if you want to go through that. But with that, from Science Direct, a new study from September 2023, the future. Love when that happens. But research paper, medical cannabis laws lower individual market health insurance premiums. What do you know? And if this wasn't reason enough to deschedule cannabis and normalize it so that anyone using it can get the same sort of insurance discounts that you would get for any pharmaceuticals, right? It's only fair at this point. So abstract, you can pause to read the background, the methods, and the results. But main thing to bring you down to the conclusions, the implementation of medical cannabis laws lowers individual market health insurance premiums. Read it and weep. Health insurance spending, including premiums, comprises between 16% and 34% of household budgets in the U.S. As healthcare costs continue to rise, our findings suggest that households that obtain their health insurance on the individual, not employer-sponsored market in states with medical cannabis laws appreciate significantly lower premiums. And I wonder if this says something about the typical cannabis user as well. Just cost less to be a cannabis user than not, it seems. And so more down here if you want to pause or read otherwise. Full link in the description. Very interesting findings. But with that, another one, Science Direct. This one is of July 2023, so fairly new as well. Well, single-cell analysis reveal cannabidiol rewires tumor microenvironment. Sounds very promising and reason to deschedule via inhibiting alternative action of macrophage and synergizes with anti-PD-1 in colon cancer. And so I'll bring you down to the highlights. A lot of scientific jargon in here, but main top one at least should be a big finding for any scientist or anyone doing cancer research. CBD shapes the TME, or the tumor microenvironment, to prevent tumor progression. That sounds very promising, and again, more reason to deschedule than not. But abstract, there's a lot of information here you can pause to read. Now, of course, findings are ongoing as we do more and more studies, and if we could deschedule, we could do more, and hopefully larger sample size ones. But nonetheless, here we report that CBD inhibits colorectal cancer progression by modulating the suppressive tumor microenvironment. And then, of course, it does more action, but taken together, we provide new insights into the anti-tumor effects of CBD. And so sounds very promising what CBD can do. And after reading this, it's, again, more reason to deschedule, but also a reminder for me why I will probably take CBD for the rest of my life so that I do not end up with anything out of control in that region. And so with that, some figures to show you, or at least some visuals from Mark Landers, why people use cannabis. Plenty of reasons from the Washington Post: to relax, pain relief, to have fun, be social, to be creative, to improve sex, to sleep, and other. Let me know why you might consume it in the comments. But with that, this is actually, sorry, let me exit this first. Derek Thompson, thank you for sharing this, writer for The Atlantic. The millennial attitude shift from booze to cannabis is way more dramatic than he thought. And so people are waking up to this, it seems, slowly but surely, just highlighting that as time will progress, it seems cannabis will be more and more the substance of choice. Millennials are now almost twice as likely as boomers to say moderate drinking is bad for you, and daily cannabis users have quintupled since 2018, so not bad. More U.S. young adults believe moderate drinking is detrimental to health. 34% in 2018, now 52%, more than half after just 5 years. Fascinating. Share of recreational cannabis users in the U.S. in 2020 by generation. Half of them was millennials, and this was in 2020. Well, how often did they use cannabis? 2019, 74% never, 21%. In 2021, 53% said never. Down by, almost 20% there. Just over 2 years. COVID turned a lot of people towards cannabis and made them realize it wasn't the devil's lettuce. Right? Fascinating. And then one more. How harmful do they feel cannabis is to a person's health and well-being? In 2018, 22% thought it was extremely harmful. In 2021, only 14% did. And then not harmful at all went from 9% in 2018 to 21% in 2021. Fascinating findings from Y-Pulse survey data. And so with that, on to some MSO news. Cresco Labs reports their second quarter 2023 results. Year of the core, whatever the fuck that means, initiatives delivered strong improvements in gross margin, adjusted EBITDA, and operating cash flow. And of course, I'm a little bit disappointed that the deal with Columbia Care didn't go through, because as we get to Columbia Care's earnings in a moment, you'll see if we were to combine that revenue with Cresco's, things would be looking a whole lot better. But I still believe in time, a rising tide will lift all ships once we get our day. But with that, you can pause to read second quarter 2023 financial highlights and operating highlights. And then management commentary, balance sheet liquidity, other financial info, and capital markets M&A activity here. And so, yeah, again, very disappointed. Cresco's doing fine. I think they did $198 million up 2% sequentially. But unfortunately, I do not have from Cannavestments the usual update. He did Columbia Care, but then he has not done Cresco Labs or Air Wellness. And so once I get those, I will put those in the comments as soon as possible. But for what it's worth, at least I can share in the near term that Toby Cannabis is looking forward to hosting Cresco Labs CEO Charles Bachtel for a chat on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. So this will be Tuesday, August 22nd at 5 p.m. I will definitely be tuning into this. Some questions or at least some commentary down here from people. But as a shareholder, I definitely want to listen to see what he has to say and what they plan to do going forward. I do remember that Cresco had bought in some dispensaries in Maryland, I believe, and then that deal fell through. And so it's just another unfortunate thing where we couldn't have predicted it, couldn't have predicted New York to be so bad and such a shit show on purpose from these stupid regulators and politicians there. But we keep striving. And so with that, from Business Wire, Columbia Care reports their second quarter 2023 results. And so they make it nice and clear. You can see it outright. Growing their revenue, keeping some profit. But of course, they do have a lot of costs, I imagine, with that large footprint. Not profitable yet. But so, of course, you can pause to read those second quarter 2023 U.S. GAAP financial highlights. While management commentary, you can pause to read here. It's again Columbia Care. Well, I do like how they do this breakdown, top 5 markets by revenue in Q2, California, Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, top 5 markets by adjusted EBITDA, Maryland, no doubt, big jump there, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And of course, this did not have Maryland's legal adult use. That will come in Q3, those results. And so operational highlights, you can pause to read. Driving cultivation expertise, sustained momentum, and then capital markets liquidity highlights. And so again, shucks, too bad that they did not merge, but that makes Columbia Care an attractive potential acquirement for another MSO, I would think, in the long run. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. But with that, from Cannavestments, improved Q2 showing from Columbia Care with margin expansion, improved cash flow, although still negative, and cost reductions. Underlying profitability still trails top peers, though, as management seeks to restructure debt in light of an increasingly tight balance sheet. So lots of work to do. Much like Cresco, but you can pause to read here for more on Columbia Care. And with that, press release from Air Wellness as they report their second quarter 2023 results. And I do have a small position in Air Wellness as well. I would like to increase this, and I'll show you mainly why as we get into the next little bit and we run through this. But just to give you the highlights, revenue up 18% year over year to $116.7 million, excluding discontinued operations. Company delivers record adjusted EBITDA, like EBITDA matters, of $29.4 million, up 78% year over year, yada yada. You can pause to read that. GAAP loss from operations improved 81% year over year, 79% sequentially to negative $4.5 million. So they're cutting costs, it seems like, excluding discontinued operations. So of course you can pause to read for management commentary, and then I'll bring you down with this last paragraph and second quarter financial summary. And so you can pause to read. Main thing, well, we thought there'd be a bit more growth quarter over quarter from New Jersey, especially, and maybe Connecticut. The main thing is look at their gross profit. Q1 2023, $117.7 mil, $48.3 mil gross profit. Less revenue, more gross profit, $56.6 million. I'd say that's impressive, so good to see them cutting costs. Still an operating loss. But what I just find fascinating is that, of course, after 280E removal, they'll be able to keep more profit, not pay as much tax, and the world's their oyster once that finally happens. But if you look, the gross profit from one quarter that was generated by Air Wellness was $56.6 million, and the whole company's market cap value after Friday close was just $61.962 million US dollars. And so just to me, it's just so undervalued, especially because from what I believe going forward with their footprint in Florida, once that adult use happens, Ohio, New Jersey, once New Jersey opens and has more stores, only up from here, at least in my view, especially if we just take you down second quarter and recent highlights, you can pause to read. But the main thing is they are restructuring their debt and fixing their balance sheet slowly but surely over time with all these little deals here and there. So you can pause to read this bit, but that is the second point I wanted to connect on as to why I want to increase my position. Not only is I just think they're insanely undervalued, doing roughly $56 million in gross profit in one quarter and having their market cap be $61 million. It's just the fact that it seems here subsequent quarter end closed a $40 million refinancing and upsizing of its existing mortgage for its Gainesville cultivation facility, contributing a net $14 million of cash proceeds, and the new loan carries an interest rate of 4%, 5 years. Like, what other cannabis businesses are getting this low of rates? And seems like they're successfully restructuring their balance sheet in a way that's going to, help them survive in the long run. And so that's at least why I like Air Wellness and why I want to increase my position. but hopefully you guys can appreciate that context as it might give you some more perspective going forward. And so with that, out of the last MSO news, Rise dispensaries after some rebranding. Green Thumb has also opened a new dispensary in Fruitland Park in Florida, its 85th retail location in the nation on August 16th. And so good to see Green Thumb continuing to expand in that very competitive Florida market and what will be more and more competitive come 2024. And we did not get an update on the the AG and Supreme Court issue with that whole ballot, but once we do, likely next week, hopefully we'll have something, but more here if you wanted to pause to read about what Green Thumb is doing in Florida. And so with that, the remaining stories out of, and so we started with the good state news stories, now we're starting with the state shenanigans, or continuing with them as MJ Stock Trader shares this article from Syracuse.com. As of August 15th, an urgent plea to Governor Kathy Hochul to save New York's cannabis industry, because she has driven it deep into the ground. She's so incompetent, the Office of Cannabis Management had promised all 463 licensed applicants the opportunity to serve their communities safe and regulated cannabis. But of course, they're focusing on social equity, equal outcomes, which means basically none of them who were promised get the chance, right? Everyone becomes equally poor because no one essentially gets the chance, only those who Kathy Hochul deems are worthy. Yet only these 22 are currently operating at a minimal capacity, and that is how incompetent Marxists, maybe closet Marxists, they might not even know they're Marxists. They think they're doing the right thing, but that is how social equity works, folks. And so we got some updates, though, out of New York. As of August 18th, New York judge grants limited preliminary injunction against state's CAURD program. And so I've been reading through this sort of while I've been setting this up this morning, so I don't know very well. I wish I knew more, but basically just wanted to share with you the information, and hopefully next week I can give you a bit more detail. But essentially, the order does allow some licensees to continue working towards opening. Now, I invite you to pause to read, but I think this is the most important part. The new injunction means that at least some of the 463 CAURD license holders, though it's unclear how many, and so it seems like justice is being served and, helping more of them actually get equal access to opportunity and open up, as opposed to what Hochul has, done until now, will still join the 24 current operators while the underlying legal case continues to work its way through the courts. But the entire CAURD program could now be in jeopardy, Brian signaled in his order, which I think is ultimately a good thing, because this is just how they wanted to implement their ability to discriminate who gets a license. But then, of course, we have these vets come in and be like, wait a minute, you want to give it to people who are in prison, yet you're not going to give us vets who serve this country a chance? Bullshit. And so I will update you as the story continues. This is, I guess, the order from the judge. More information down here if you wanted to pause to read. From defendants down to pending litigation. And I will admit, though, these are some newer stories I didn't get around to reading. I plan to do it this weekend, so hopefully I'll have more perspective on this next week. But, do let me know if I missed anything in the comments. But I think I covered at least this article as best as I could in that short summary. And then down here, a little bit more. It's a long one, actually. So Bryant wrote, and then down to involved parties. And then the coalition continues down to here. And so we did get this updated story as of the 18th as well. And so court filings provide glimpse into New York regulators' cannabis plans. And this is mind-boggling as we get to see what the Office of Cannabis Management was planning, and it certainly wasn't keeping any promises or providing any more equal access to opportunity, as the OCM anticipates less than half of CAURD licensees to be operational within 2 years. And so if the judge didn't step in, we'd get 2 more years of shenanigans, and less than half of those promised would even get a shot, whereas now the judge stepping in could scramble this whole program, but could actually provide equal access to opportunity, as that is the American way, justice being served, right? And so more here if you wanted to pause to read, but this is what I find fascinating. Damien Fagon, clearly a closet Marxist, whether he knows it or not. I'm sure he knows it deep down. But Fagon also said the OCM projected that less than half of the CAURD licensees are expected to open within 2 years of licensure, and at most 100 licensees will be operating by January, but likely fewer than 75. Just highlighting, like, yeah, we're idiots. We don't know what we're doing, and so while we made all these promises, we're nowhere near that, and this is what we're actually on pace for. But get a load of this next paragraph down here, because I think this is a lot more telling of the type of person Damien Fagon is, the way he views the world and the framework he uses to make decisions based on his beliefs or ideologies, whether they're true or not, and what makes him the perfect chief equity officer to, provide equal outcomes for as many people. And this makes him the judge who gets to discriminate who becomes the 22 legal retail dispensaries that have been able to open thus far, and who becomes the fewer than 75 that are projected to open by January. And so what a clown show. But get this, he says, it is reasonable to project an even lower conversion rate for granted retail licenses and a longer timeline from final authorization to grand opening. Now, why would you say this? Is it because of your incompetence and the inability to actually facilitate this? Or is it because he deep down believes that, they're handing out these CAURD licenses to people that have been harmed by the war on drugs? And I imagine if this guy gets to decide, he's going to try and choose as many people of color, right? Because that helps right the past wrongs if you're a Democrat and social justice and all that. But I swear, someone can only say this if he's not blaming it on his own incompetence and the fact that they haven't gotten the funding and New York's been such a shit show, is that he's saying this because he really believes that people of color are less competent than white people. That's the only reason I can justify him making that sentence. And we'll see a similar thing in the next sentence where the average time to open an adult use retail dispensary in comparable urban markets, like this sentence is totally fine if we just take this out. And if he were a normal human being and not a Marxist that's such a social justice warrior and brainwashed by that ideology, he would probably just say the average time to open an adult use retail dispensary in markets such as Los Angeles and San Francisco, big Democrat cities, is 18 to 14 months, for example. And obviously what he doesn't seem to realize is that 18 to 24 months is not the norm. That's the absolute worst possibility, looking at shitty policies that have been implemented in California, and he's trying to justify that for his own shittiness in New York. Like, you cannot make this shit up. And again, he just has to make it about race by adding comparable urban as opposed to just, speaking as it is and acknowledging his own incompetency, because he clearly can't look in the mirror. And so that's what I have to say, although take what I say with a grain of salt, much like anything MorningStar produces. But let me know what you think in the comments, because, again, I think they're just making a fool out of themselves, the Office of Cannabis Management, which is a good thing, and ultimately, hopefully, time will get a positive ruling, a breakdown of what they've created thus far, and, they can rebuild from the ashes going forward. That would be the dream. And so with that, from Marijuana Moment, Nebraska Governor blocks push to ease cannabis and drug use restrictions for police recruits. State needs data before making a policy change that could be perceived as watering down the standards to become a law enforcement officer. Well, it's kind of funny because in many studies that I've shown in previous videos, it actually points to cannabis users being better quality individuals. And so the opposite clearly seems to be true, it seems, which is funny, but I don't know enough about Nebraska. It just sucks. If I lived there, I would move. Too bad they're so backwards in their views towards this beautiful plant. But with that, another annoying hindrance in Alabama, just when it seems like Alabama's going to get some progress, a judge had halted it and then re-awarded where Verano didn't get awarded a license and a local Alabama company did. Now, those licenses are halted again, unfortunately. So Alabama judge halts medical cannabis licenses again, this time over alleged open meetings violations. What the fuck? And so if you're interested, of course, link in the description to read more about what's going on in Alabama, but so far no medical market, although it was supposed to launch. The continued delay, and this is like the fourth or fifth of these, the delay has been caused by their refusal to allow the law every time. They keep on doing things they shouldn't do, and they keep on being stuck. And so, small story, but again, more on that if you're interested about what's happening in Alabama, or if you happen to be from Alabama and want to get the rundown. While from High Times, this is just a damn shame, and a reality of, again, the blatant discrimination that somehow is able to continue against people that use cannabis, because the war on drugs was never a war on drugs. It was a war on people, much like those who are proponents of cannabis. And as High Times is showing us, Vermont weed businesses were denied federal assistance after flooding. Any other business in any other industry could possibly apply for federal assistance after some sort of an accident like this and likely get help. But the cannabis industry, again, the blatant discrimination, you cannot make this shit up. This is what's unjust. And it's this war on people that use the plant that really has to end. And that'll go a long way to righting a lot of the past wrongs that social justice warriors are fighting for, as the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont and others plan to help raise funds for them. And I imagine a lot of the help is going to come from any other cannabis dispensaries that happen to be flush with cash, but hopefully some other businesses, don't discriminate clearly as much as the DOJ or the Biden admin. Other businesses in any other industry that might be flush with cash hopefully will help and restore some sense of community back in Vermont where they might have been hit by floods. But with that, lastly, folks, I don't share these as much as I used to anymore, but for anyone that's interested, one of these market reports, because they're just estimates, we don't know what's going to actually happen, but cannabis-infused edibles market is expected to grow from $9.68 billion in 2023 to $20.6 billion in 2028, a compounded annual growth rate of 16.3% during the forecasted period. And so I think there's a link here if you wanted to grab that. More here if you wanted to pause to read and find out. Otherwise, link in the comments. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.